Today, we will be covering the topic of task-analyzed training procedures. This is task list item C6. Throughout this training, there will be questions for you to answer on your homework sheet, and a short quiz will follow this training. This training program is based on the RBT task list and is designed to meet the 40-hour training requirement for RBT certification. The program is offered independent of the BACB. The agenda for today is first to cover task analysis. We will define it first, and then break it down with exactly how to do it, and then provide examples of different task analyses. Then we will discuss chaining. Again, we will define it and break it down, and then emphasize examples in the basic setting and the applied setting. Finally, we will cover the different types of chaining. This includes total task, forward, and backward chaining. We will define and provide examples of each of these. Now let's move into the first topic, task analysis. Principles of Behavior by Malott and Shane defines task analysis as an analysis of complex behavior and sequences of behavior into their component responses. When you do a task analysis, you're looking at the process or the steps involved and not just the final outcome or the product. One of the main reasons that we create task analyses is because providing reinforcers solely on the final outcome or product is not enough. If the client is consistently making errors throughout a change response, they will never contact reinforcement for that change response. Therefore, the process versus product general rule comes into play. The process versus product general rule, also defined by Malott and Shane, states, sometimes you need to make reinforcers and feedback contingent on the component responses of the process, not just the product. What this means is we need to reinforce individual steps within a change response in order to get those steps to occur before we can make reinforcers contingent on solely the completion of the entire chain. So the question is, what is the need for a task analysis? Task analyses are needed to determine the sequence of behaviors that are necessary and sufficient to complete a given task efficiently. By identifying the steps involved in complex tasks, we can better help our clients perform each and every step by providing reinforcement and feedback, as mentioned in the process versus product general rule, on those individual steps. By providing that feedback and/or reinforcement, our clients will then be able to independently perform those steps, and eventually, by fading out prompts, perform an entire change response, aka every step in the task analysis, independently. Now let's look at an already completed task analysis. On the right side, we have a task analysis for stocking merchandise. Step 1, open the box. Step 2, look at the label. Step 3, find the shelf with items that are the same. Step 4, put the merchandise on the correct shelf. Step 5, turn the items so the labels are facing out. Step 6, pull the items to the front of the shelf. And step 7 is make sure the items are in line on the shelf. Question: what is the complex behavior? A, the task analysis. B, opening the box. C, stocking the merchandise. Or D, the final step. On your homework sheet, fill in the question, What is the complex behavior? I'll give you some time to get that question filled in. The answer to the previous question was C, stocking merchandise. The complex behavior refers to the name of the change response. It describes several different responses in one name. For example, the complex behavior of showering can encompass several different responses, such as turning on the water, getting your hair wet, grabbing shampoo, etc. But showering would be the complex response that refers to the entire change response. On your homework sheet, fill in C for the answer. I'll give you some time to get that filled in. Now, with the same task analysis for stocking merchandise, let's look at the component responses. On your homework sheet, fill in the question, what is the fourth component response in stocking merchandise? I'll give you a little bit of time to get that question filled in. The answer to the previous question, what is the fourth component response in stocking merchandise, is put the merchandise on the correct shelf, which you'll see right here. Each numbered response here is a component response of the more complex response of stocking merchandise. On your homework sheet, make sure to fill in the answer, put the merchandise on the correct shelf. I'll give you some time to get that answer filled in. Now that we've identified the complex response and the component responses, we will discuss how to individualize task analyses for each student. Task analyses should be individualized. Every learner is different, and differences should be accounted for based on things such as age, skill level, or even prior experience of the learner. For example, the response of washing hands could include 6 steps for one learner who is older, has good gross and fine motor skills, or had explicit training with hand washing. These steps might include turning on the water, getting hands wet, getting soap, scrubbing, rinsing, and turning off the water. But for a younger client, or one that has trouble with gross and fine motor skills, or one that has not had prior training with hand washing, could require 11 steps for the same response. These could include touches handle, turns handle, right hand under, left hand under the water, right hand under soap, left hand on soap pump, pushes pump down, scrubs hands, rinses right hand, rinses left hand, and hand on handle, turns handle off. So the next question would be, how do you go about effectively creating and individualizing task analyses? Well, there are several ways that you can go about doing this. The first option is to observe a competent performer, so having someone who is skilled in the task perform the task, and you would write the steps that are involved. For example, you could have a skilled chef create a dish step by step while you are observing and writing those steps down. The second option, you can execute the task yourself. So you would engage in the complex task yourself and write the individual steps down as you go. For example, you can create the dish yourself and write the steps down that were needed to complete the dish. The third option, you can get expert input. Persons with demonstrated expertise on a task can be someone you consult with when creating a task analysis. So instead of observing the chef create the dish, you can instead get their expert input and have them detail the steps for you. The final option, option 4, is trial and error. So systematically refine your task analysis by creating one and making adjustments by testing the task analysis out several times until an adequate task analysis is achieved. So this, you would go off your current knowledge and list the steps for creating the dish, and then test it out and make refinements as necessary. Question: which of the following is not a way to create an effective task analysis for using a cash register? A, think about how you would work a cash register and use those steps. B, ask a cashier what steps are involved. C, watch a cashier use a cash register. Or D, work the cash register yourself. On your homework sheet, fill in the question, which of the following is not a way to create an effective task analysis for using a cash register? I'll give you some time to get that question filled in. The answer to the previous question was A. Think about how you would use a cash register and use those steps. Instead, you should employ one of the following methods. Observe a competent performer. So in this example, you would watch a cashier perform the task. The other option is to execute the task yourself. So in this example, you would work the cash register yourself. The third option is to get expert input. So in this example, you would ask someone such as a cashier. And the last option is trial and error. So in this example, you could use your current knowledge to create a task analysis, but all available resources should be used, such as an internet search. Then once implemented, adjustments should be made following errors. On your homework sheet, fill in the answer A. We are going to create our own task analysis for shoe tying. This video is in slow motion, so it will allow us the chance to write each step accurately. Our first step that you see here is going to be crossing the laces, and this forms an X shape. The next step is pulling the left lace, which you'll see here, through the bottom of the X. The next step is going to be pulling the laces very tightly. So you'll hold onto each lace and pull both at the same time. With this next step, you may need to be more descriptive, such as let go of the left lace, put the finger on the knot, wrap the lace around your thumb. But for this task analysis, we're going to keep it simpler and simply say, make a loop. All right, now that the lace is wrapped in a loop, you're going to wrap the left lace around the loop. Okay, which you're going to see right here. And now that the lace is wrapped around the loop, the next step is going to be pull the lace halfway through the opening. Okay, and the final step, which you're going to see here, is to pull both loops tight. Now we have a completed task analysis. Now that we've discussed task analyses, the next topic of discussion is going to be chaining. Cooper, Heron, and Heward define behavior chain as a linked sequence of responses leading to a terminal outcome. To go a little bit more in detail, Principles of Behavior by Malott and Shane define behavior chain as a sequence of stimuli and responses. Each response produces a stimulus that reinforces the preceding response. It is an SD or operandum for the following response. Going off of the POB definition, let's look at behavior chains in the Skinner box. This is encompassing basic research. First, the chain is put into the box. This is an operandum for the response of chain pulling. This is then consequated by the light being turned on. The light turning on is also an SD for the rat to press the lever. The light is termed a dual functioning chain stimulus because it reinforces one response while simultaneously is an SD for another response. Therefore, it has two or dual functions. Finally, this is consequated with the water appearing. Question: what does the light function as? A, a reinforcer, B, an SD, C, an operandum, D, both A and B, or E, both B and C. On your homework sheet, fill in the question, what does the light function as? I'll give you some time to get that question filled in. The answer to the previous question was D, both A and B. The light was a reinforcer for chain pulling, and it was an SD for pressing the lever. The technical term for this is dual functioning chain stimuli. This is defined by Malott and Shane as a stimulus in a behavioral chain reinforces the response that precedes it and is an SD or operandum for the following response. The light was not an operandum because it was not a part of the environment that the organism operated or manipulated. Examples of operandums in the previous example would be the chain or the lever. On your homework sheet, fill in the answer D. I'll give you a second to get that filled in. Now, let's look at a chained response in the applied setting. For practicality, this response is kept less detailed. However, we will discuss ways in which it could be more detailed. The SD for washing clothes, which is the complex response, would be the site of the full laundry basket. This is what evokes the response of emptying your dirty clothes into the washing machine, which results in your clothes now being in the washing machine. This outcome is also an SD for you to now put laundry detergent into the washing machine, which clearly results in detergent now being on your clothes. This then signals the response of starting the washing machine, which will eventually result in your clothes being washed. Depending on the age, skill level, or experience of the client that you are working with, a task analysis of this chain response may need to be more or less detailed. For example, a client may need more detail in regards to how much detergent to put in, or to close the lid of the washing machine, or even exactly which buttons to push. Question: when should you make a task analysis more detailed? A, if a client complains about having to do the task. B, if a client is frequently missing a step that could be broken down more. C, if a client isn't motivated to complete the task. Or D, all of the above. On your homework sheet, fill in the question, when should you make a task analysis more detailed? I'll give you a little bit of time to get that filled in. The answer to the previous question was B, if a client is frequently missing a step that could be broken down more. What you should do is identify how you can break the step down further. Then you should fade prompts and provide reinforcement until each broken down step is occurring independently. Going back to the bathroom example, if your client is unable to follow the step get soap, you may need to break it down even further. This could include hand on top of soap pump, hand under soap pump, and push pump down. Reinforcement would be provided for each of these even smaller component responses until the client can independently get soap. On your homework sheet, fill in the answer B. I'll give you some time to get that filled in. We will next move on to the various ways that a chained response can be taught. The three ways that they can be taught are forward chaining, backward chaining, and total task presentation. We will define these terms, discuss how to use each method, and go over examples of each. The first method we will be looking at is forward chaining. Forward chaining is defined by Malott and Shane as the establishment of the first link in a behavioral chain with the addition of successive links until the final link is acquired. So now let's break down exactly how to teach with forward chaining. So with forward chaining, the steps listed in a task analysis are taught in their naturally occurring order. You will begin with the first step in the chain, and you will teach that step in whichever way is chosen, such as through prompting. And then reinforcement is delivered upon the completion of this step. You will not require the student to engage in the remainder of the steps. Often you will complete these steps for them or prompt them through the remainder of the steps. The prompts will be faded for only the first step until the step is occurring independently by the client, and they have therefore learned this step. Then you will allow the client to complete the first step and then add in the addition of the second step and begin teaching that step. Prompts will again be faded until the first and second step are now completed independently, and reinforcement is delivered only following both steps 1 and 2. This process is continued until the client is able to complete all steps in the behavioral chain independently. Now we're going to watch a video example of forward chaining.
This is an example of forward chaining. All right, Hope, are you ready to practice writing your name?
No, it's too hard.
But it only has 4 letters.
I still think it's hard.
Do you want me to show you?
Yes.
Okay. It's H-O-P-E. 4 letters. Do you think you can write the first letter for me and then I'll help you finish it?
Yes.
Okay. Good job writing the H. O-P-E. Get a sticker. Okay. Do you think you can write H-O and I'll finish it?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, good job. And I'll finish it. P-E. See, it's not so hard, is it?
No.
All right, can you write 3 letters? I'll finish it for you. With the E. Good job. Okay, do you think you can write your whole name this time? All 4 letters?
Yes.
Good job, Hope. You wrote all 4 letters of your name.
The next method we will cover is backward chaining. Backward chaining is defined by Malott and Shane as the establishment of the final link in a behavioral chain with the addition of the preceding links until the first link is acquired. Now let's look at how you teach with backward chaining. With backward chaining, you begin with the trainer completing all steps for the client except the final step. This can be done beforehand through prompting the client through the initial steps, or with the trainer showing the client while describing each step. Reinforcement is delivered upon the completion of the final step. The prompts will be faded for only the final step until this step is occurring independently by the client and they have therefore learned this final step. Next, complete all steps for the client except the last 2 steps, allowing the student to now complete the second to last step. Prompt as necessary with this step. Prompts will be faded until the second to last and last step are now completed independently. Reinforcement is delivered only following both of the final 2 steps. This process is continued with the addition of preceding steps until the client is able to complete all steps in the behavioral chain. Now we're going to watch a video example of backward chaining.
Let's look at how to perform backward chaining. The definition of backward chaining is linking together behaviors beginning with the last behavior in the chain. Let's go through the procedure with the same example of washing hands in order to see how this type of chaining differs from forward chaining. First, prompt your student to perform all the behaviors in the chain in order, except for the last behavior, and then reinforce your student's independent performance of the last behavior.
Wash hands. Okay, we're going to turn water on, get soap, rub hands, scrub, 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 rub, rub, rub. Excellent. Water off. Great job. Your hands are all clean now. Here, use your fruit treat.
In this example, we see the instructor prompting the student to turn on water, get soap, rub hands, rinse hands, and turn off water. The instructor stops before the last behavior, and the student must complete the last behavior of drying hands independently in order to receive reinforcement. Then, reinforce your student's independent performance of the next to last and last behaviors in order.
Wash hands. You're going to turn water on. Get soap. Rub your hands. Rub, rub, rub. Scrub, scrub, scrub. Great job. You remembered all by yourself. That's excellent. Here's your fruit treat.
Now you see the instructor prompts the student to turn on water, get soap, rub hands, and rinse hands, but then stops so that the student must complete the last two behaviors of turning off water and drying hands in order to get the reinforcer. Then reinforce your student's independent performance of the last 3 steps in order and continue in this manner until your student can complete the entire chain independently following the SD. An advantage of using backward chaining is that the reinforcement always falls at the end of the chain, allowing you to use a variety of reinforcers.
The final method for teaching chaining is total task presentation. Total task presentation is defined by Malott and Shane as the simultaneous training of all links in a behavioral chain. Now let's cover how to teach with total task presentation. Total task presentation is a variation of forward chaining. All steps in the task analysis are being trained on at once during each session. This is not the best method to use if you have a learner who is unable to complete a majority of the steps in the task analysis. Prompting is provided as necessary with the steps that the learner is unable to complete independently. These prompts are systematically faded until independence is acquired for the entire chain. Reinforcement may be delivered following targeted steps or following the completion of the whole chain. Now we're going to watch a short video that provides an example of total task presentation.
Sally pulled the shirt. Nice job folding the shirt.
Next, we will watch a video that recaps what we've covered in today's training.
Hi, my name is Mae Boburn and I'm a board certified behavior analyst with Brett Denovity Associates. In this video, I'll be talking about the use of chaining, which is area G8 in the 5th edition BACB task list. Task analysis is a process in which a task is analyzed into component parts so that those parts can be taught through the use of chaining. There are 3 types of chaining. There's total task presentation, forward chaining, and backward chaining. The discriminative stimulus is the cue that is present to alert the organism that reinforcement is available. In chaining, the prior step serves as the SD for the next step. Each response served as a condition reinforcer for the response that produced it. Each response serves as a discriminative stimulus for the next response to the chain, with the exception of the first and last responses in the chain. When brushing your teeth, the SD for putting toothpaste on the brush is removing the cap from the toothpaste. When preparing a bowl of cereal, pouring the cereal into the bowl is the SD for accessing the milk from the refrigerator. When driving to a familiar location, various environmental stimuli, such as tall trees, a park, a hospital, the school, can all serve as the SDs as well.
A certain street sign will evoke turning behavior.
For example. To develop a task analysis, ask an expert in the field, watch a peer complete the same task and observe the components completed, and you could also use a published, reliable resource. For total task presentation, break tasks down into smaller teachable steps. Each subset is taught and reinforced in the sequence it is performed. The learner completes each step of the chain, each time the skill is presented until all steps are completed independently. An advantage is that the entire task is presented at once, which may lead to a quicker rate of acquisition. A disadvantage is that it may not be appropriate if the learner lacks prerequisite skills or cannot complete many components of the chain. An example of this would be like washing hands.
When teaching hand washing during a total task presentation, all components of the chain are introduced in the order that they will occur each time the task is presented. Again, each response serves as a discriminative stimulus for the next response of the chain. For example, the SD for pumping soap into your hands will be to rub your hands together, and the SD for rubbing your hands together will be to rinse the soap off of your hands.
In forward chaining, you're teaching the first step or subtask that the student has not completed acquisition and prompting the student for the remainder of the task. Reinforcement is delivered immediately following the first step or subset completed. Once the student meets criteria with the first step or subtask, then the focus of instruction will be on the next step that the learner has not met acquisition on. Reinforcement will then be delivered for the completion of the next step or task. This will continue until all steps of the chain have met criteria. An advantage is that acquisition begins with the initial step of the chain. A disadvantage is that with reinforcement being provided during all of the initial steps of the chain, the learner may lack the motivation to complete any steps after reinforcement has been provided. An example of this would be with handwriting.
When teaching handwriting in a forward chain, initially only the first letter in the name is reinforced. When the student has met acquisition and is expected to write the first 2 letters of his name, he may lack the motivation to write the second letter because he had not yet contacted reinforcement.
Backward chains teach the last step or subset of the task the student has not mastered. When teaching backward chaining, you would teach the last step or subtask that a student has not yet met acquisition would be focused on first. This provides the student with immediate reinforcement through successive completion of the task. Once the skill has met criteria, the focus of instruction moves to the next to last step of the sequence. Reinforcement is then delivered upon completion of the last 2 steps or subsets. This will continue until all the steps of the chain have met criteria. An advantage is that reinforcement is provided at the end of the chain. A disadvantage is that there may be no or limited opportunities to perform other subsets or steps in the chain. An example would be like getting a snack.
When teaching getting a snack in a backward chain, the motivation to complete the chain is to access the snack. But since the prior steps of the chain, like accessing a lunchbox or going into a pantry, may not be performed as frequently, this may potentially decrease the rate of acquisition.
Although there is a lot of research to support the use of chaining for skill acquisition, there's also research to support the use of chaining as part of a treatment package to address problem behaviors as well. In the Lally et al. Article, chaining was utilized in conjunction with functional communication training and extinction to decrease escape-maintain behaviors. After a functionally equivalent verbal response was taught to replace the problem behavior, which was requesting for a break, response chaining was introduced systematically to increase the number of tasks completed before the participant was provided access to reinforcement or a break. To help disseminate the science, please share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.
On your homework sheet, fill in the question, what are the 3 types of chaining? I'll give you a few moments to get that filled in. What are the 3 types of chaining? The answer to this question is 1, forward chaining, 2, backward chaining, and 3, total task presentation. I'll give you a few moments to get this filled in on your homework sheet. On your homework sheet, fill in the question, in which type of chaining is the final link taught first? I'll give you a few moments to get that question filled in. The answer to the previous question, in which type of chaining is the final link taught first, is backward chaining. Make sure to get that answer filled in on your homework sheet. This concludes today's training on taskless item C6, Implement Task Analyze Chaining Procedures. You'll now be required to take a short quiz.